In desktop web experiences, we are used to placing our mouse over things and stuff happens. This is generally thanks to the JavaScript OnMouseOver event, which has been around since the Stone Ages of JavaScript. But Microsoft, for reasons known only to themselves, have decided not to include a hover event with its controls, or an OnHover property. Buttons have an OnClicked property, but no OnHovered property. So we can't even rig it by putting a transparent button control on top of stuff that we want to capture that hover event. Well, thanks to the amazing Power Apps community, we have a Power Apps component framework component, PCF component, that will allow us to capture the hover event of any control of our choice. It's a little wonky, it's not perfect, but it will get the job done until Power Apps decides to give us our hover event. Please give us a hover event, and I hear that it is in the works, so we will see. So as part of this process, we're going to build out this really cool custom chart. No Power BI required, it's a totally custom chart. Every column is an instance of a custom component, and we're gonna build it out right now. Now, next week, we're gonna have another great tutorial on UI UX design in your Power Apps. There are so many great videos out there on how to do Power FX and do really cool tactical things, but not a lot out there on UI UX design. So I encourage you to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this content with your friends. Let's all level up our Power Apps game together. I'm Ryan Johnston, and now let's get creative. So let's begin with the end in mind. Here is what we are trying to accomplish. This little chart that captures spending over the course of the last 7 days, where it will automatically update the date and the amounts, and it's all dynamic. And when you put your mouse over one of the columns, you get this lovely little dollar figure up above that shows what the spending was for that particular date. We also want the date with the most spending to be a different color, and it's all got to be done dynamically, and we have to be able to have this happen when we put our mouse over the column. And so that's what we're going to be working on. All of this is built to look like this. This is the Figma file for the Front-End Mentoring Challenge expense chart component project. And so this is kind of the look that we're trying to mimic, and this is the look that we're given that we're supposed to mimic for the mouse over. I think we've done a pretty good job of achieving that, and so let's go in and do this together. Here's the Figma, and here's the completed Power App. So I feel pretty good about it. So that's our end result. Let's go ahead and get going. I'm going to assume that you have already imported the solution, which has the Dataverse table as well as the app itself. Now, what we do need is to import separately the managed solution that has the OnHover feature. We will do that a little later in the app design. Let's go ahead and get started for now. So you have the demo screen here, which has the completed solution. We're going to go to this working screen here, which has everything except our chart and the calculations for this month total. You will note that my balance, this is just a hard-coded number. Like, there's no information given to us about, like, well, I mean, what is their balance? Like, did they have a total account, whatever? So that function's not there. So it's just a random number that is there. But we need to create this chart. So what we're going to do is we are going to create actually a single component that we use for all 7 days. And so what we'll do is we will create a container, a horizontal container that is going to contain basically 7 columns in it. And so what we'll do here is we will position this down here, and let's make it span the full width of our parent container. So we'll do parent.width. And our X is 0, Y is 98. We're not making this one responsive, particularly because we do have this OnMouseOver functionality. You don't have hover on a tablet or a mobile device, and so we're just not going to worry about responsive for this particular design. And I know from having looked at my Figma creation here that our total height on this is 226 pixels. So we're going to go ahead and make that 226. Okay, so let's take a look at the component itself. here is what we are trying to replicate, and then we'll be able to use that for each day of the week. And so let's start with a brand new component. We are going to call it, I'll have to do a different name. Whoops, why did I create two here? We are going to call it we'll just call it ComChart. And our size for this little bugger is going to be 226 by, excuse me, it's going to be 75 wide by 226 height. And I got that again from the front-end mentoring, basically in my Figma file, was just, you know, drilling in here and seeing the size of each of these. Now you'll notice that the bar is only 50 wide, but the tooltip over the top of it is 75 wide. And you'll notice that the tooltips actually overlap each other. So this will be important when we bring this into our container. How do we actually make this functionality where the individual components of this horizontal container actually overlap each other to make this work? So we're going with a width of 75 and then our total height, which is 226. And then there are three pieces of information that we need for this component. We need the day of the week, we need the total amount that was spent for that day, and then we also are going to pass it the total amount spent for the week, because remember, we want the color to be different if it is the date with the highest expense. And so basically we're going to compare today's expense with the highest expense for the week, and if they're equal, then we know, this is the max spend day. We'll change our color. So we're going to add three properties here: today's day, today's spend, today's date, and the biggest spend. So let's create three new properties. And so we're going to say component today, date, and I'm going to use singular because in my main demo I use plural on everything. And we're going to say today's date. And it is going to be a date time property. And then we are going to create component today spend, which will be the amount spent today. And that is going to be currency. And then we are going to create the com today, and com is short for component, so anytime I have a component related variable or field, I put a com in front of it. Com today, actually, sorry, this is com max spend. And this is the maximum spent on a given day throughout the week. Not on a given day, but just on a day throughout the week. And this one will also be currency, okay? So we have our three custom properties, and now we're ready to go. Let's start by adding a label control, and this will be our day of the week. And so let's pop it down here. Let's shrink it down a little bit. And I like Lado, I don't know how it's pronounced. And let's see, what do we want for our font size here? We are gonna go with a font size of 10. And we want to center. And then what we want this to be, we want this to be 3 letters that represent the day of the week over the last 7 days. And so what we want to do here is we are going to say, we want, use the text function. We're gonna pull in our today's, what is the name of our control? It is ComChart. Oh, let's label this. So we'll call this label today label. And I don't know, does anybody else know why this happens? That sometimes when you change the label, suddenly its position and its height and width go all wonky. So here we go. We're gonna say X is 0, Y is 2. Well, we'll just drag it in there. Okay, now then, back into the formula. So ComChart dot com today date, okay? And so this is going to take today's date, which is going to be a date time. So it's going to be, February 12th 2024 at 8 a.m., whatever. We just need the first 3 letters of the date. This is so easy to do. Watch this. We are going to now create a custom text format, 3 Ds, and bada bing, bada bang. There you go. Now, the only problem is it's uppercase first letter, so we're going to go in here and say lower, and done. Now we are going to have the first 3 letters of the day of the week of whatever date it gives us. Now, obviously, we've got a default that's popped in here, which is what? It's just of 1/1/2000, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and put in a max today's spin. That's fine, $150, and a max spin of, let's say, $500. Okay, and so we go back. We've got our label. Okay, now then, we need to create our actual bars here for the graph. And so let's create a button, because we want that that color to change when we hover over it. So you see this is the hover look versus the static look. So a button is the best way to get a hover color. So we'll say button, and here's our button. We don't want it to have any text, and we don't want it to be the full width of things. We want it to be, let's move this over here. So what is our width of our buttons is 50 pixels. So we'll say width is 50. We're going to talk about height in a second here. Now let's talk about the position of this button here. It is going to be having its size change. And when you set the vertical position, the Y position, it's always based on the upper left-hand corner. But every single one of these iterations of this component, that upper left corner is constantly going to be moving. So we need to set its Y position relative to something that doesn't move, which would be our today label. So that's what we're going to do. First of all, let's go ahead and call this button. We'll call this button chart bar. And so we're going to say that we're going to center this. So let's start with x is equal to parent dot width minus self dot width divided by 2. That's our centering formula. And then we're going to say that its Y property is going to be the label today. It's going to be today's label dot Y minus self dot height. And then that's going to stack it right on top. And I think that's actually a good gap right there. So we're just going to leave it. So now then, if I come in here and I change my height value to say 50, there, it stays glued to the bottom. If I say 200, it's going to go to the top. Now that's too high. So now then, how do we figure out how tall this bar is to be? Well, basically we know that our tallest bar is going to be the one, so we know that our tallest bar is going to be the one with the max spending. So basically, whatever amount of space we want to allot to this bar, the tallest that it can possibly be, that is going to represent the maximum spend. And the height of all of the other bars is going to be some proportion of the maximum spend. It's going to be based on it. So let's say that, $31 is, what, like 40% ish of $52. And so that means that this bar is going to be 40% as tall as the maximum height possible for our max bar. So what we need to do is basically figure out what's the maximum height that we want for one of these bars, and then calculate its height based on a proportion of today's spending relative to the maximum spending. Hopefully that makes sense, but if not, we're just going to do it right now. So we need to have room here for our number, our tip for this thing here. And so I feel like the max that we want for this is a height of 156. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to say that height is going to be something times 156, a percentage times 156. So basically, if it's if it's the day that has the max spend, then you're going to have max spend divided by, or you're going to have today's spend divided by max spend, and it's going to be 1, which is 100%. But if it's less, that means that you're going to have the today's spend divided by ComChart max spend, and that's going to give us a proportion. That's going to give us a percentage, and we're going to do that times 156. Now, when I went and grabbed the bar and was manually resizing it, it totally screwed up our Y. So I've got to come back in here and redo that really quick. We'll speed that up and pop that back in. And there we go. So we're back to size. Okay, so notice how that resized itself nicely. If we look at our calculation here, we have our height. If we select that there, you've got 0.3. So for this particular day, where we have spent 150, that's 30% of 500. So if we come in here and we say, I spent $400, now look, that bar goes up. $500, we are at the max height. $2, it's teensy tiny. And so there we go. So 500, we'll go ahead and put it in 200 for kicks and giggles. Okay, we are making progress. Now then, let's talk about our colors. So we don't want a border. I'm not putting a border around this thing. And our colors are going to be this color here, this red. So how am I getting a hold of this? This is all in Figma. And I have a pro version of the front-end mentoring challenge where you can actually load all of the Figma files. And such a great thing. You could bring this into, you could just bring the JPEGs in. If you have the free version, you get a JPEG of this whole look, and you can bring that JPEG version in and use an eyedropper to pull the colors, but it makes it so easy when you can just pull it up in Figma, get all of your sizes, all of your dimensions, all of your colors. It makes it so easy. It's like, $100 a year to do this, but it will really, really, really help you in your design journey. So we've got our hex color here. And we are going to say our fill, where's our fill? There we go. Fill color is there, okay? And please wait, there we go. Okay, now then we want our hover color. Our hover color based on our template is just a little bit lighter. And so we're just gonna use the color fade, function. Let's see, hover color. Hover fill is just going to be, we're going to do color fade of self.fill, and whoops, that goes darker. We actually want it to go lighter, so let's try that. I'd say that's pretty close. Yeah, we're going to go with that. So that's a 30% lighter color for our hover. Now, when we click on it, I actually just want it to stay that same hover. So, and look, now that we've got focus, we've got a border around it. So let's go to focus border thickness is 0. So we've got our border thickness set to 0. Now let's go to our pressed fill, and we're just going to say self.fill. Okay, self.hover fill. Let's use the hover fill. So we click on it because nothing's going to actually happen when you click. So that makes it nice. Okay, now then, let's add our tip on top. Tip on top. Hilarious. Okay, and we're going to do that by creating a component so that we can just fill it and so that we can have rounded edges. Oh, let's talk about that. Rounded. So our default button has a rounded edge of border radius of 10, and if we look at our rectangle here, it has a radius of 5. So let's just change that to border radius of 5, and that looks really nice. Okay, now let's create a component because we are going, it's not a component, a container. What am I saying? Let's create a container, and this little container is going to be what we do over here. It is going to be 75 wide by 40 tall. So let's go in here, 75 width and 40 tall. And it's going to have, what are our properties here? We've got I'm going to have to drill down in here. Let's see what we got here. So we've got a border radius of 5 and a dark brown color. We'll go ahead and capture that right here. And so here is our border radius of 5. We have no shadowing on it, so let's turn that off. And then our fill color is a hex value of 382314. And we're going to put that there. Okay, now let's add a text label inside of it. And we're going to call, let's go ahead and call this container amount. And we'll call this label amount. And again, look at that. It all changes when we change our label name. I feel like this has just recently started happening for me. So maybe I need to update my, I don't know, do a different, change my authoring version. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that's the deal. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you. So 0, 0. We are going to change that. But what our width was 75 and our height is 40. Okay. So we've got that all set. We've got our label, which is going to be, we're just going to fill the space. And we're going to say 0, 0. And width is going to be parent.width. And our height is parent.height. So if we change our mind, we can move it around. All right. And then we're going to use bold text that is Lotto. And let's center it and let's make it white. Okay, and there we go. That is our amount, and our text for that is going to be chart dot today's spend. And oh my goodness gracious, what have we got going on here? Oh, today's date. Today spend. There we go. Now, we need to make this look like currency. And so what we'll do is we'll use our handy dandy text function, and we'll come in here, and our format is going to be $, and then I want to make sure that we have pennies after it. So we will do, and a comma if it's in thousands. So we'll do 123 dot 00, which means that if there are no pennies, then it'll give us a 00 at the end of it. Okay, and so then that gives us our $200. If we come in here and we say we only have today's spend is say $1, then you'll see that we've got our nice little just 1. If it's 1,000, then we get a comma. And of course, that's more than our max spend. Now, notice what happens here. It wraps around. So what are we to do? You know, our sample is not really big enough to account for that. We could do some fancy stuff where we adjust the font size if it's too much. I'm just not going to worry about that. It's not the main point of this lesson. So let's actually remove the pennies and just keep it simple. And that will help things look good. Let's go back now to our total and make it 300 so it's less than our max spend. Okay, so we've got our tip here, and now it needs to be positioned relative to the top of this button control. So let's go into con amount, and we're going to say that Y is the, let's see, the button chart bar dot Y minus self dot height, and then we want to put a little bit of a gap, so let's say minus 10. Okay? And so that should, if I've done my calculations right, if we hit the max value on this, which, so if max spend is 500 and today's spend is 500, that puts us right at the top. Doesn't get over the top, but it is right at the top. Now, the visibility of this will be determined on whether or not our mouse is hovering over this button control. And this is where things, before we get there, I forgot one thing. If we are the max spend, then we want the color of this background to be this lovely blue color. So let's find what that color is. This is our hover color. So we want the non-hover color, and so let's go grab that. That's this color right here, and that cyan color is 76B5BC. We'll hang on to that. So what we're going to say here is fill color. Where's our fill? I don't press fill. Let's just do our regular fill. Okay. We're going to say if com chart dot today's spend is equal to comchart.com max spend. So basically that means that what we're spending today is the maximum amount, and so we're going to do this different color. Then we are going to use this other color, which we currently have in a hex value, and so to get that transitioned over to RGBA, then let's just do this. We're going to come over here. We're going to say fill custom, and we'll drop our hex value in. Now that's filled. We can pull that up, fill, and now we have that RGBA color. Let's do that. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go back to having that fill with transparent, but we've got our RGBA value. That's what we were after. Now then, let's come back over here, and if it's max, we want this teal color. If it's not max, then we want to go back to our little red color, okay? So we are at the max spend. It is 500, and if we come in here and we say that today's spend is actually only 200, now then it's the pinkish color, okay? So we've got that taken care of, and that should also take care of our hover fills and stuff as well, because it's just a color fade property. So let's go back, make it 300, make it pink. Now, how do we make this thing appear? This is where we use our Power Apps component framework piece, because there's no way for us to capture the hover event for this button. So we're going to use the PCF gallery, pcf.gallery, and you can just, the link is again in the description. I'll also have a link in the README over in GitHub, and a link to the GitHub for this PCF. There are two different hover, so if you search for hover on PCF gallery, you are going to find two different ones, one by Akshay Ramgudi, and then another one by Alan Vasquez. The one by Alan Vasquez is the one you want, because this one creates issues when it sits on top of things, and I won't go into it. This is the better one to use, and so you're just going to go over and click on download, and you will use just download the managed file. So you're just going to download that zip file. It's a managed solution, but before you import that solution into your Power App, if you have not used Power App Component Framework components before, you have to activate that in your settings. So bring up your settings, go to your admin center, and then you will load up your environment. Go to settings in your environment, and then I just will type in component, and you want Power Apps Component Framework for Canvas apps. Make sure that when you scroll down here that Power Apps Component Framework for Canvas apps is turned on. If you try to import that solution and this is turned off, it'll actually delete the component. You won't be able to use it. So make sure that this is turned on before you import that managed solution. So once you've got that imported, then come back to our app here. And what we will do is we will go here, still in components, we are going to be importing a custom code control. So we say import components, and then up here, rather than a canvas component, we're going to say code. And we are going to find this OnHover right here by Alan. Now, I have the other one that I said don't use. I have it in my solution because I tested around with it too, but you want to make sure you have the OnHover by Alan, and then you say import. I've already imported it, so I'm not going to import it again, but you'll click import and it'll bring it in. The way that this hover control works, let's look at it in our completed demo, is all you have to do is put the OnHover control inside the container that you want to monitor. So there has to be a container. Well, we don't have a container, we just have a button. So we need to put this inside a container. So let's do that. Let's create just a container, and we're gonna call this, button, and I think I already have a button, so we're going to call this con button 1, and we'll move this down. I like to keep all my things visually in order, and we're going to say that, well, so now then, all of the X and Y and height and positioning stuff that we had for our button now needs to apply to this container. So I should have done that from the get-go. Sorry about that. And we'll say button X position is that, and then our Y position, copy, cut and paste, is that. Whoops. Our Y position, cut and paste is that. Our button width is going to be 50, and our height is going to be that. So con button width is 50, and height is paste. Okay, so now we've got our container doing what it's supposed to. We're going to cut our button and paste it into the container, and then we're just going to say that it's X is 0, Y is 0, width is parent dot width, and height is parent dot height. Okay, so we are ready now to insert our component, our code control that will allow us to identify whether or not we are hovered over this container. So make sure that we're in our container for the chart bar, and then we're going to go to insert. Under code components is OnHover. And it just needs to sit right there. We're going to give it a height and a width of 0 because we don't want it covering anything, and it doesn't need to have any height or width. And it needs one argument. It needs the name of the container that it's living in, which is con chart bar. So we do not enter it, we don't come in here and say, actually pass it the actual container instance, the control. We actually just pass it as a string. So con chart bar, and it's ready to go. Now, we're going to go ahead and save because we actually have to refresh the page to initialize this PCF. If I put my mouse over it, you'll notice that if I click on OnHover and is hovered, we'll toggle between off and on once my mouse is over it. I put my mouse over it and nothing is happening because it has to be initialized. So make sure I've just saved. We're all good to go there. So let's refresh the page. You're going to get a warning that this app may contain unsafe code. We open it anyway, and we'll take control, go back to our component, and here we go. If we put our mouse over it now, let's tap into OnHover. We're going to watch this is hovered and see what happens. Boom. Is hovered is now on, off, on, off. We did, for, again, whatever reason, the X and Y change, so we'll just change that to 0. It doesn't actually matter what it is, and even though width is 0, it shows that it's huge. I don't understand, but whatever. It doesn't matter. So we put our mouse over and it's visible, invisible. So all we do is come up to our container amount and we change our visible property to OnHover3 dot is hovered. And if we're hovered, it'll be visible. And if we're not hovered, it's invisible. Look at that. There's a tiny delay between the time you put your mouse over the control and the time that it's visible, but it's very, very small, and it's still better than, it still gives us creative flexibility that we wouldn't have otherwise. Okay, so this component is now basically done. If you're wanting to just know how to do hovering, then really you can just stop the video here, but we're gonna go ahead and build the rest of this out, pull from our data, do a bunch of cool calculations, and finish out this chart. And let's do this. So we come into our container, which we never fixed this. Border radius is 0, it has no border, and we want no shadowing. Let's go back to our source. And what we've got here is we've got this little gap in between and kind of a big gap on all sides. So it's basically lined up with this horizontal rule is the maximum width of our container. So our container actually goes the full width, but we want to pad it relative to the length of this horizontal rule, which, I didn't name, so we're gonna call this rec rule. There we go. And so what we're gonna say here is the horizontal rule, basically the width on either side of it is going to be what our padding is for this container. So our padding left is going to be, what we're going to do is say parent.width minus recRule.width, and then we're going to divide that by 2. And that's the padding for the left. And then we'll do the same thing for padding right. Okay? So then that will pad things. Now then, we need to put 7 instances, and we'll call this container charts. We're going to put 7 instances, one for each day of the week, into this component. So we're going to go into here and say insert custom, and we have com_chart. And notice how our padding, the first one on the left, puts it right up against it. So here we're going to say com_chart copy, and then invalid division by 0. And we'll figure that out later. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got to figure out what this gap is. We could just kind of guess and check and, figure out negative-ish, but let's figure out how we would actually calculate this. So if it were responsive, this is just a great exercise to learn. So basically, we know that we have a total width here to work with of approximately 540 pixels less the padding on either side. But we also know that each one of these components is 75 pixels wide, and there's 7 of them. So we obviously know that we've got more components than we have space to deal with. And so if we can figure out what the difference is between the total width we have to work with and the total width of all of our components, and then divide that out by the number of gaps that we need, that will determine what our gap is. So let's do this. Layout gap is going to equal, let's start by figuring out the bigger number, like what is the total amount of space that these components need. So we'll just grab one of them, and we'll say com_chart1 dot width times 7. So that's the total number of components that we've got. Then let's subtract from that the real estate that we've got to work with, which is con_charts dot width minus the padding that's on either side. So in fact, let's just do, we're in it, so it's just self.width minus self.padding left, and it's the same on either side. So we'll just do that times 2, and we don't need parentheses because of order of operations. Okay, so basically, this gives us our difference, which is 65 pixels. So we're 65 pixels too big in order to fit. So we're going to divide that across the number of gaps that we need. Now remember, we have 7 of these pieces, but only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gaps. And so we will do this divided by 6. But it is a negative, actually we do need order of operations here. We've got to put a parentheses in so that it's that total divided by 6, but it's not a gap, it's a negative gap. So we're going to divide by -6. And now then you can look, and our gap is all perfect. Everything is beautifully arranged. Okay, so now then, we've got our control and our design pretty much done. It's now a matter of getting data into this chart. So how are we gonna go about doing that? Well, we've got our 3 variables. We've got our today's date, our spending for today, and then our max spend all together. And so what I'm gonna do is, rather than having to hand type this and make you wait through this, we're gonna go into the demo and snag the formulas, and then we'll cut and paste, and I'll talk through them. So let's start with the date. So we're going to paste this in here, and all we've got here is it's today minus 6. So it's 6 days ago. And then we're going to go into the other one and today's date, paste, and this one is going to be minus 5. And then this one is going to be date minus 4. You get the drift. And we have the last one being today's date. Okay, so there we have our last 6 days, and I am recording this on a Saturday, and today is Saturday, so we are looking good. Now then, we need to, based on the date that is supplied in today's date, we need to figure out what the spending was for today. So again, I'm gonna do a little copying and paste, and then I'll explain the formula. So today's spend is this little one here, and obviously we've got delegation issues, so depending on your data source, this may or may not be the best solution for you to use. But here we go. Let's go in and take a look at this. So what we're doing here is we are going to sum the columns that fit certain criteria. And so our criteria is we've got our spending tracker table, and we are wanting all of the fields where the date time is greater than the value of today's day, which actually for us is not, that's different, today date. And the date time is also today date, today date. There we go. Okay, so we are wanting where the date value is greater than or equal to the date value of today's date and less than the value of adding a day to today's date. So basically it's giving us every transaction that's between 12 a.m. today and 11:59 and 59 seconds and milliseconds p.m. today, or 23:59, you know, if you're on 24-hour time. So it's the full day, and then we're going to sum the total spent column. And so we're going to copy that now, and now we've got a big number. Now, it's way off the top of the chart because we haven't updated our max spend. But let's go ahead and go in to all of the today's spends and just paste that in. And since it's based on self.today's date, we can just copy and paste without modification. Here we go. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is get our maximum spending all squared away with these columns so that they work well. Let's take a look at what we've done in our demo here, where we have actually used for max spend, we are using a formula, a named formula. This is a perfect example of when to use something where it's calculated outside of OnStart and will automatically update itself if, say, the data changes. So it's a great option for it. So let's go to App, go to Named Formulas, and what you'll see is, rather than retyping this, let me just explain what we've done here. So we basically created a list of all of the chart elements, and this is based on the demo, and they use the same data, so I'm not going to rewrite these, but you could, rewrite these to your chart that you've created. So, in our case, it's going to be comchart _1.com today spend. And you'll do that for each of the 9. I'm going to undo that just so it doesn't break the demo, but you'll see how it works. And it's going to give us the maximum of that, which gives us this variable nf max spent. So now then we will go into our working screen here, and I've made some changes off camera, so that's why this division by 0 is showing up. So we click on Sunday and say max spend and change that to nf max spent. And we're going to go through here and do the same for the rest. And we should, at some point, we're going to see one of these turn blue when it becomes the maximum spent. Oh, there we go. And one more. Look at that. So we now have everything working. We put our mouse over, and really the main thrust of this lesson is complete. Let's just finish it out by putting our total for the month and then our percentage change from last month, which I'm also using, I recommend us using named formulas for. And so I've got already those calculated. Last month's spending is here, this month's spending. And so let's talk through this formula real quick. Basically, we are going to sum the columns, the total spent columns for those fields which meet the following criteria, where the date time of that transaction for last month's spending is greater than or equal to 1 month less than this month. So we use date add. There's not a date subtract function. So we use date add, but we add -1, in this case, months. And so it's going to grab the beginning of the month of last month. And we also want that date time to be less than the beginning of the current month. So it's not less than or equal to, it's less than the beginning of this month, greater than or equal to the beginning of last month. And that will give us all the spending for last month. For this month's spending, very similar formula. We're just taking the very beginning of the current month. That's where we've got month now, and then less than the date add of adding 1 month to the current month. So from the beginning of this month to less than the beginning of next month, and we're going to grab the sum of total spent. That gives us these two variables, last month's spending and this month's spending. And so the total spending for this month is NF this month spending. And we want that to be formatted like money, so we say text, and then we're going to do this with a dollar sign, and we want 123.00. We want our cents on this one, and there is our total for this month. And then the percentage change from one month to the other is just going to be NF this month's spending minus NF last month's spending divided by last month's spending. And that's going to give us a percentage. Now, let's format that as a percentage. So we have text, and then we want it to be a number, a 2-digit number. And actually, yeah, so we'll do a 2-digit number and a percentage sign. And that gives us our percent. Oops, sorry. So it gives us a decimal point. So we need to multiply this thing, this total by 100. Okay, so negative 55, in fact, let's give us our decimals, and we'll force decimals there. So now the thing is what happens if our spending goes up from one month to the other? That minus sign isn't going to show up. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, in fact, let's just do this. Let's add another named formula in here. And let's say this is going to be percentage change month over month. And we're going to say NF for name formula monthly change equals this number times 100. So this is actually going to give us our monthly change in a positive or negative number, not a decimal. And so we'll come over here now, and we will say we want the text of our name formula monthly change, and there we go. But what happens if it's a positive number? So let's say, like, we'll just do -1 times that right now. So it's a positive. We want it to say it's plus 55% for that year, so for that month. So what we'll do is we'll say if NF monthly change is greater than 0, then we're going to put in a positive sign, and that's it. And then we're going to concatenate that with what we already have there. So if NF monthly change, which, and we'll put in our -1 right now for our test. If monthly change is greater than 0, we put in that positive. And if not, the negative's automatically going to show up. So let's go in and remove that. And now then, we are done. So here is our finished product, and we put our mouse over. We've got, it looks like our tooltip is cut off just a little bit, so we need to maybe go and make some adjustment on our height of things. That's all right. We won't worry about that for the tutorial. You can go fix that on your own. Good problem for you to figure out. And it's looking great. We've got our total spent this month. We've got our percent change month over month. And when we go over here to our sample that we tried to replicate, doggone it, I think we did a darn good job. So that's my tutorial for today. I'm going to post the tutorial of how we create this actual interface in a later video. It'll be linked in the description, and as well as up in the right here in the video when it is done. And of course, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you're made aware when that comes out. Follow me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you and see what kind of creations you're making. Again, I'm Ryan Johnston, and now you go out and create something amazing.